The year is 1986. Somewhere beneath the ice-cold waters of the Norwegian Sea, a diver descends into darkness. His breathing echoes inside the helmet. Each bubble that escapes carries with it a secret that would remain buried for the next 38 years. This is not just another military story. This is about a man who saw something he was never meant to see, did something he was never meant to talk about, and for nearly 4 decades, he didn't, until now. Picture this. It's the height of the Cold War. Nuclear submarines prowl beneath Arctic ice like steel predators. NATO and the Soviet Union play a deadly game of cat and mouse in waters so cold that exposed skin freezes in minutes. And caught in the middle of this underwater chess match is Norway, a small nation guarding the most critical naval choke point in the world. You see, if you look at a map, Norway controlled the gateway. Every Soviet submarine leaving their massive base on the Kola Peninsula had to pass through Norwegian waters to reach the Atlantic. We're talking about hundreds of nuclear submarines armed with enough firepower to end civilization. The Soviets knew it, NATO knew it, and the Norwegian Navy divers, they were the ones who had to do the impossible. These weren't ordinary divers. They were ghosts, operating at depths where the human body starts to break down, where nitrogen narcosis makes you feel drunk, where equipment failure means death. The North Sea in winter isn't just cold. It's a liquid knife that cuts through even the most advanced diving suits. Water temperatures hover around 4 degrees Celsius. That's cold enough to kill you in minutes without protection. The technology they used seems almost primitive now. Hot water suits, pumping 3,500 watts of heat just to keep them alive. Breathing mixtures of helium and oxygen that made their voices sound like cartoon characters, but kept their minds clear at crushing depths. Rebreathers that released no bubbles, because bubbles meant detection, an international incident, or worse. But here's what most people don't understand about military diving in the 1980s. It wasn't just about the physical dangers. These men carried burdens that went far deeper than any ocean. Imagine knowing something that could change history, seeing something that officially never happened, and then being told, "You will never speak of this. Not to your wife, not to your children, not to anyone, ever." The Norwegian military doesn't mess around with secrets. Under their Security Act, breaking silence means prison. It means losing everything: your pension, your reputation, your freedom. The law is crystal clear. Some secrets are meant to die with you. So why would someone break that silence after 38 years? To understand that, we need to go back to October 3rd, 1986. A date that would haunt not just one Norwegian diver, but reshape underwater warfare forever. 600 miles east of Bermuda, a Soviet submarine called K-219 was patrolling with 16 nuclear ballistic missiles. Each missile could destroy a major city. Then something went wrong. An explosion ripped through the submarine's missile compartment. Toxic fumes filled the vessel. The crew fought desperately to prevent a nuclear disaster that would have poisoned half the Atlantic Ocean. The official story says it was an accident, a seal failure, old equipment. But in the intelligence communities of NATO, whispers told a different story. What if it wasn't an accident? What if someone had been there? Someone who wasn't supposed to be there? You have to understand, 1986 was the year everything changed beneath the waves. Reagan and Gorbachev were about to meet in Reykjavik. The Cold War was entering its final, most dangerous phase. And in the freezing waters between Norway and the Soviet Union, diving teams were conducting operations so secret that even mentioning their existence was forbidden. The Kommandoen, Norway's elite naval divers, had capabilities that the public couldn't imagine. They could approach enemy vessels undetected, plant devices, gather intelligence, and most importantly,
They could do it all without leaving a trace, like they were never there. But the human mind isn't designed to carry such weight forever. Studies show that keeping traumatic secrets literally changes your brain. It affects your sleep, your relationships, your health. Every time you look at your family and can't tell them where those nightmares come from, every time someone asks about your service and you have to lie, it eats at you, day by day, year by year. The divers who served in these units weren't just warriors, they were human beings. They had seen friends die in training accidents that were never reported. They had pushed their bodies to limits that left permanent damage. 1 in 3 deep-sea divers from that era suffered decompression injuries. Many developed neurological problems. The nitrogen bubbles in their blood left scars you couldn't see, but felt forever. And then there was the psychological toll. Imagine being at 150 meters depth in pitch-black water. Your only connection to the surface is a thin line that could snap at any moment. The current is so strong, it takes everything you have just to stay in position. And somewhere out there in the darkness is a Soviet submarine with nuclear weapons. Your mission: get close enough to touch it, do what you came to do, and get out without starting World War III. The pressure, and I'm not just talking about water pressure, was unimaginable. These men lived double lives, heroes in the shadows, ghosts in their own homes. Their families knew they served in the Navy, but nothing more. When they came home with injuries, they couldn't explain how they got them. When they woke up screaming, they couldn't say why. Fast forward to 2019. Something interesting happens. 2 former Norwegian Special Forces divers, Tore Lassemoen and Jon Rokkenes, suddenly break their silence about a classified mission from 1990. They reveal how their team discovered a Soviet mini-submarine in Norwegian waters, how they photographed it, how they watched it surface and disappear. For 29 years they had kept this secret. Then, almost overnight, they decided to talk.
Their revelations sent shockwaves through Norway's military establishment. If these men could break their silence after 3 decades, who else might follow? What other secrets lay buried beneath the cold waters of the North Sea? The pattern was clear. After roughly 30 years, the psychological need to tell the truth began to outweigh the fear of consequences. The burden of carrying these secrets into old age became unbearable. These men wanted their families to know who they really were, what they had really done, the sacrifices they had made in silence. Which brings us back to our diver from 1986. 38 years of silence. 38 years of carrying a weight that no human should bear alone. What did he see down there in the darkness? What did he do that required such absolute secrecy? The pieces of the puzzle start to fit together when you look at what else was happening in those waters in 1986. NATO was conducting its most aggressive submarine operations ever. American attack submarines were penetrating deep into Soviet territorial waters. Electronic surveillance systems were being planted on the ocean floor. And caught between these 2 superpowers were the Norwegian divers, the only ones who could operate in those conditions, in those locations, without being detected. Some operations were so sensitive that even within the military only a handful of people knew they existed. Operations that involved not just Norwegian forces, but coordination with American and British intelligence. Operations that, if exposed, could have triggered the very war they were trying to prevent. The technology these divers used tells its own story. The Mk-15 and Mk-16 rebreathers they wore were more than just diving equipment. They were infiltration tools. No bubbles meant no detection. The mixed gas breathing systems allowed them to work at depths where normal humans would be crushed. And the tools they carried? Let's just say they weren't for underwater welding. But perhaps the most revealing aspect is the timing. 38 years is not a random number. It's long enough for the strategic value of the information to fade, for the technology to become obsolete, for many of the key players to have died.
but it's also at the very limit of human endurance for keeping such secrets. Psychologists who study military trauma talk about something called moral injury. It's different from PTSD. It's the wound that comes from doing things that violate your deepest beliefs about right and wrong, even when those things are necessary, even when they serve a greater good. The conflict between duty and conscience can tear a person apart. For a military diver in 1986, operating in those frozen waters, every mission carried moral weight. Were they preventing war or escalating tensions? Were the risks they took and the secrets they kept worth the cost? These questions don't go away. They grow heavier with time. The decision to finally speak, to break that 38-year silence, represents more than just one man's choice. It's a reckoning with history, with identity, with the price of keeping the peace in a world balanced on the edge of nuclear annihilation.
What exactly did this diver reveal? The specifics matter less than the broader truth that beneath the waves of the Cold War, men performed acts of incredible courage that history will never fully record. They operated in a realm where physics and politics collided, where one mistake could mean not just personal death, but global catastrophe. The North Sea remembers everything. Every submarine that passed through its depths, every diver who descended into its darkness, every secret that was buried in its cold embrace. And sometimes, after decades of silence, those secrets find their way back to the surface. For the families of these divers, the revelations bring both pride and pain. Pride in finally understanding the true nature of their loved one's service. Pain in realizing how much they carried alone. The wives who thought their husbands were distant. The children who wondered why their fathers startled at sudden noises. They all deserved to know the truth. But truth, especially in the world of military intelligence, is never simple. Each revelation opens new questions. If this diver kept silent for 38 years, how many others are still out there? How many operations remain buried? How many heroes will take their stories to the grave? The Cold War ended officially in 1991, but its shadows linger. In NATO headquarters, in intelligence agencies, in the minds of those who served. The war beneath the waters continues to echo. The Norwegian divers who guarded the northern approaches did more than just military service. They held the line between two nuclear superpowers at the most dangerous point in human history. Today, as tensions rise again in those same waters, their stories take on new relevance. The lessons learned in 150 meters of freezing darkness. The courage required to face not just physical danger, but moral complexity. The strength needed to carry secrets that could change how we understand history. When that Norwegian Navy diver finally broke his silence after 38 years, he didn't just reveal a mission, he revealed a human truth. That some burdens are too heavy to carry forever. That some stories demand to be told. That sometimes the greatest act of courage isn't keeping a secret, it's knowing when to let it go. The North Sea keeps its secrets well, but not forever. And somewhere tonight, another veteran of those dark waters is deciding whether their time has come, whether their story needs to be told, whether 38 years is long enough. The truth has a way of surfacing, even from the deepest waters, even after the longest silence. And when it does, it reminds us that history is never just about nations and weapons and strategies. It's about people. People who dove into darkness so the rest of us could sleep safely. People who kept secrets that burned inside them for decades. Next time you look at the ocean, remember, beneath those waves lie stories we're only beginning to understand. Stories of courage and sacrifice, of secrets and silence, of men who went deeper than anyone should go and saw things no one should see. And sometimes, if we're lucky, if we're patient, if we're ready to listen, they surface.